Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. April 9th, 2018.
The Kuhner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services. Cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
Should the United States bomb Syria? Okay, my friends, very dramatic developments over the weekend, and now the drums of war are beating louder and louder and louder. Here is now the absolute latest. Over the weekend, the war hawks who have been clamoring for a major war in Syria now essentially got a gift from the heavens. Bashar al-Assad, the dictator of Syria, backed by Vladimir Putin and Iran, and as well as Shiite militias, is now literally on the verge of winning the civil war. It has been a 7-year civil war, hundreds of thousands dead, millions of refugees. It has been one of the nastiest sectarian civil wars in modern memory. And now with just a few rebel pockets left, Assad now controls pretty much 90% of the country. The Muslim rebel stronghold of eastern Ghouta fell outside of Damascus several weeks ago. And so now, with several pockets of resistance left, ISIS on the run, Al-Qaeda on the run, the Muslim Sunni resistance fractured and shattered, all of a sudden, according now to the military-industrial complex, the Pentagon, as well as the mainstream media, who have been itching for us to topple Assad, suddenly now they have claimed that a chemical weapons attack took place on the outskirts of eastern Ghouta in a town called Douma, D-O-U-M-A. And so, according to them, Assad unleashed a brutal chemical weapons attack that has killed at about 40 civilians, many of them women and children. Hundreds more are injured. The international community has now condemned the attack. CNN, MSNBC, the BBC, who have been beating the drums of war for 7 years, now lay the blame squarely at the feet of Bashar Assad, saying the Syrians did it, Vladimir Putin is behind it. General Mattis, all of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are now saying we must show Syria that this is unacceptable, and that we will start bombing within 24 to 48 hours. President Trump himself took to Twitter under pressure from the generals, calling Assad a quote-unquote animal, saying that this must not go unpunished, blaming Vladimir Putin for what took place, saying there will be a, quote, tremendous price or a big price to pay for this chemical weapons attack. And in fact, he just delivered a statement surrounded with members of his cabinet saying that the United States is going to be issuing a response to the chemical weapons attack in Syria within, quote, 24 to 48 hours. If you remember, when there was another chemical weapons attack in Syria, Trump responded by launching 60 Tomahawk missiles at a Syrian Air Force base. There were Russian soldiers there as well. Luckily, none of them were killed. So now the international community, especially the establishment here in Washington, especially the War Party, are now demanding that Trump respond in kind. Leading the charge was CNN. Within minutes of the chemical weapons attack, CNN, already getting footage, showed dead bodies, many of them with foam coming out of their mouth, claiming that this was an attack by Bashar Assad, another one, 3 at least, they say, and that this clearly violates international norms, international rules of war, and they are now saying, Who will stop the mad dog of Damascus? Listen to CNN showing the pictures of dead kids and dead women, saying here is a chemical weapons attack. Assad and Putin are responsible. Roll it, Brittany.
We have breaking news out of Syria this morning. There's new video from eastern Ghouta, that's a suburb of Damascus, showing several people Syrian activists say were attacked with a suspected chemical agent.
Dozens have died, and local doctors say those numbers could go up. Now, CNN cannot independently verify these videos taken by anti-government activists and doctors, but we have to warn you that the video you're about to see is graphic. Now, if you don't think you can take it, look away if you don't want to see it.
الله أكبر مدينة دوما الله أكبر استشهدوا جراء قصف.
I know it's so hard to look at. These are the men, women, children of Douma lying on the floor. This is an underground shelter here. What you see around their mouth appears to be foam. That's a sign of a chemical attack. This is not the first time chemical attacks, though, have been reported in Syria.
Now, the government has been accused on at least 3 other occasions in the last 6 years. But the Syrian government denies being behind this incident.
Already, there was the propaganda. You can feel the manipulation, the propaganda, playing to people's emotions and heartstrings, showing dead children with foam coming out of their mouth, dead women, dead elderly. There they were. And notice, none of this has been verified. All of this is coming from the anti-Assad activists, the Islamic Muslim rebels, who now are literally on the ropes. They're down to a few pockets of resistance, and there they are claiming footage. Here is what Assad has done. Here is what Putin has done. The world must respond. And unquestioningly, the media in this country, itching to topple Assad, itching to punch Putin in the face, itching now to have our troops stay in Syria, all of a sudden, bang, right on cue. The pictures came on CNN, there were the children, and before you know it, everybody is now calling for war with Syria. President Trump has just said within 24 to 48 hours, he will decide on what to do next, whether there should be a military response. But leading the charge, a man who never met a war he didn't love, lay down and love me, Lindsey Graham, went straight on the Sunday talk shows saying Trump must do what Obama didn't. Bomb Syria into the Stone Age. Roll it, Brittany.
Well, it's a defining moment in his presidency because he has challenged Assad in the past not to use chemical weapons. We had a one-and-done a missile attack, so Assad's at it again. They see us, our resolve breaking. They see our determination to stay in Syria waning, and there's no accident they use chemical weapons. But President Trump can reset the table here. To me, I would destroy Assad's air force. I would create safe zones in Syria where people can come back to their country from the surrounding area. And live a better life, train up Syrians to take on Assad so we can negotiate in Geneva from a position of strength. If it becomes a tweet without meaning, then he's hurt himself in North Korea. If he doesn't follow through and live up to that tweet, he's going to look weak in the eyes of Russia and Iran. So this is a defining moment, Mr. President. You need to follow through with that tweet, show a resolve that Obama never did to get this right.
In other words, World War III. Let's be very clear, my friends, what we're talking about. Because if you think Vladimir Putin, who has had thousands of Russians die in Syria and has invested a lot of money in Syria to protect a naval base on the Mediterranean, to prop up his ally, is just going to sit by and allow Assad's air force to be destroyed, his military to be decimated, for Russian troops to be killed and slaughtered by the United States, then this guy's a lunatic. Then really, he's lunatic Lindsey. Because the Russians, the Iranians, the Shiites, Hezbollah are not going to stand by idly. You're going to be triggering World War III, or at least a major Middle East war in which we're going to be ensnared. But it wasn't just Lindsey Graham. This cuts across the entire aisle. Listen now to liberal Democrats saying it's not just enough to shake our fist at Putin. Now we've got to cut him and Assad down to size. Give war a chance. Listen to liberal Democratic Senator Ben Cardin from Maryland say, we need to put together an international coalition and then go into Syria and go in hard. Roll it, Brittany.
In your view, would a military response be justified?
Margaret, first, it's good to be with you. Clearly, there needs to be a response. There needs to be an international response. This is against international norms. And
a military one?
Well, first and foremost, President Assad needs to be held accountable for his war crimes. Senator Rubio,
he hasn't been in the 7 years of this war.
Well, Senator Rubio and I have introduced legislation that's passed our committee that would hold the evidence accountable. We need to make sure that there is a proceeding started by the international community to hold him responsible. This is not the first use of chemical weapons. Secondly, Congress passed very strong sanctions against both Russia and Iran. The Syrian regime under President Assad cannot exist without Russia's support and the activities of Iran. The United States, the international community, need to take action against Russia and Iran for what they're doing in Syria. So we need to take a pretty strong response for another use of chemical weapons.
Okay. Then, so it was the Republicans, it was the Democrats, it was the entire mainstream media, and now it was advisors close to the president. General Mattis wants a war in Syria. The commander of CENTCOM wants a war in Syria. Now, one of his top national security advisors, Tom Bossert, went straight to the talkies, ABC's This Week with Martha Raddatz, saying, all options, we are telling the president, all options are on the table. Roll it, Brittany.
No, it's a quite serious problem. We've seen the photos of that attack. I think maybe first I would note the timing of this. It's the first thing that struck me. This is the 1 year anniversary of our action. The last time they made the mistake of using these weapons and pushing the rest of the world. This isn't just the United States. This is one of those issues on which every nation, all peoples have all agreed and have agreed since World War II is an unacceptable practice. So
is it possible there will be another missile attack?
Yeah, I wouldn't take anything off the table. These are horrible photos. We're looking into the attack at this point. The State Department put out a statement last night, and the President's senior national security cabinet have been talking with him and with each other all throughout the evening and this morning, and myself included.
Okay, my friends. Let me put my cards on the table. I don't believe it. I do not believe that Assad and Putin were behind this chemical weapons attack. I do not believe it for a second, and I will tell you why. After a bloody 7-year civil war with Assad and Putin, 90% of the country is theirs. They are now on the verge of an all-out victory. The only thing now that stands in their way would be a massive Western military intervention. It would be the act of sheer lunacy, sheer folly, sheer insanity for Assad and Putin to have used chemical weapons. And to what? Kill 40 civilians? To kill what? And injure 200? They can do that with their overwhelming conventional military power. The rebels are on the run. The rebels are finished. What I see is the exact opposite. This is the Muslim rebels, the Sunni rebels, backed by Saudi Arabia, backed by us. Remember, we were arming and funding ISIS under the Obama regime, who are now desperate for a military response to save their rear ends because they're now on the verge of being utterly decimated and crushed. And so it's obvious. I believe that they used the chemical weapons attack on their own people with the cameras ready to go to justify or rationalize a Western military response, to drag the West in. It makes no other sense. Why would Assad do this? He's maybe 3 weeks away now from winning the war. Everybody's saying it. Everybody was admitting it. The war's over. Assad's essentially won it. So now he's going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory by doing something as utterly stupid as this? When for 7 years he's shown the one thing he isn't is stupid? That to me is point number one. Point number two. Que bono? Who benefits? Why are we getting involved now after the defeat of ISIS in Syria's internal civil war? Here you have President Trump just last week saying, I want to pull all 2,000 U.S. troops out of Syria because essentially the caliphate has been smashed. ISIS has now been routed. What's our national interest? And it was the generals who came out and overruled him. And the generals who said, we need those troops to stay, to stabilize Syria, to reconstruct Syria, and to maintain a permanent military presence in Syria. So just when the generals are saying, no, Mr. President, we don't want you to pull our troops out. We have a lot more nation building to do. Suddenly now there's a chemical weapons attack to justify our forces staying in Syria. As Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is touring the United States, visiting Trump, visiting members of Congress, visiting Pelosi, visiting Ryan, visiting McConnell, visiting Schumer, and all he's telling everybody is, you cannot pull your forces out of Syria. We need you to stay there to topple our enemy, Assad. My friends, this is a frame. They're framing him. They are trying to pressure, they're framing Assad, they're framing Putin, and they're trying to manipulate our president into a war that he promised he would never get us into. Remember his seminal campaign promise? He was going to end our involvement in these endless Middle East wars. $7 trillion over the last 17 years. How many thousands American dead? What gains have we reaped from this? Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen. The military-industrial complex wants us to stay in the Middle East forever. The globalists want us to get involved to topple Assad in order to drag us into World War III with Russia. And make no mistake about it, if we go heavy into Syria, as the war party and the war hawks want, we are going to be coming to blows with Vladimir Putin and with Russia. And that is a war nobody can win. And it will destroy Trump's presidency. Syria will become Trump's Vietnam. And I believe deep down, the mainstream media knows it. And that's why they're pressuring him into a war. Because once the missiles start flying, then they will start turning on the president. 617-266-6868. Let me ask you this. It is the Kelly Financial Poll question of the day. Should the United States bomb Syria? I say hell no. You can vote on my Twitter page at the Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. A yes, B no. What do you say? Your call's next.
Well, it's a defining moment in his presidency because he has challenged Assad in the past not to use chemical weapons. We had a one and done a missile attack. So Assad's at it again. They see us, our resolve breaking. They see our determination to stay in Syria waning. And it's no accident they use chemical weapons. But President Trump can reset the table here.
Pressure now grows on the president to launch a blistering attack on Assad's regime in Syria in response for a chemical weapons attack on the outskirts of its capital, Damascus, a town called Douma. 42 civilians dead, hundreds injured. Was this a real chemical weapons attack? Should we bomb Syria? Or was it fake news on behalf of the Muslim rebels? 617-266-6868. Leslie in Quincy, you're up next. Go ahead, Leslie. Hello, Leslie? Leslie? Okay, let's see if we can get Leslie ready. John in Watertown, you're up next. Go ahead, John.
Thank you.
Hi.
Jeff, that I said this before, that I live in Watertown. There's a heavily population of Armenians and Syrians in the country. And every time I get a chance, I talk to a Syrian. They have relatives and friends over there. They all like Assad. He's a good guy. It's all nonsense. They're creating a false flag to take him down. Exactly what you said is right. But can we do something about it? Can we all call Washington? It does help. And can we have a protest meeting and get Trump to Boston? Can we do something, Jeff? But stay on it. You're right. You're 100% right. These son of a can't swear. All they want is war.
These SOBs. No, they want a war.
Yeah.
They want a war.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
John, thank you for that call.
Thanks.
Look, we have to lobby the president. Say, look, don't let the generals dragoon you into this. Don't let them do it. And think about it. Don't you feel, since the president has been elected, that our population has been softened up, manipulated into so hating Russia and Vladimir Putin, and the Russians are to blame for everything. They're meddling in our elections. They're meddling in our democracy. They're the great evil of our time, that they're trying to soften us up for a major war with Russia, and they want the battlefield to be Syria. To me, I think it's obvious what's going on here. All right. I don't want to rush it. I don't want to rush any calls. I'm going to take all of your calls, I promise. 617-266-6868. My question to you is this. Trump now, his advisors, the generals, General Mattis, CNN, MSNBC, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the entire mainstream media, the establishment Republicans, the establishment Democrats are now telling him he must bomb Syria. He wants us to hit Assad and they want him to hit Assad and hit it hard. Should we attack Syria? What do you make of the chemical weapons attack? And do you think it was fake news by the Muslim rebels to trigger a Western intervention, which is the only thing that can save them now? 617-266-6868. I'll take all of your calls after this short news break. Okay, President Trump is going to be speaking out this afternoon about the growing situation in Syria. Evan Heidenrich is in the WRKO newsroom. What will the president say? Take it away, Evan.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
So is it possible there will be another missile attack?
Yeah, I wouldn't take anything off the table. These are horrible photos. We're looking into the attack at this point.
That was one of Trump's top national security aides, Tom Bossert, telling Martha Raddatz the president is very seriously thinking about launching a new round of Tomahawk missiles, maybe even an airstrike campaign to punish Assad for allegedly a chemical weapons attack in Douma, a town outside of Damascus. Let me ask you, should we bomb Syria, or was this, as I believe, a false flag by the Muslim rebels, desperate to get the Americans involved before they are totally defeated by Assad and his forces backed by Putin and Iran? 617-266-6868. You can vote online. It's the Kelly Financial Poll question of the day. Should the United States bomb Syria? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on my Twitter page at the Kuhner Report, Kuhner, or go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. We're going to give you the poll results later this hour. You can also text us, by the way, to WRKO, so we know it's for us, whatever your message is, 70470. I'm getting a lot of vets texting me in. Here's one from 617. Jeff, this has false flag written all over it. It's the Gulf of Tonkin all over again. That was the phony attack engineered by Lyndon Johnson to justify our war in Vietnam. And just like the Warhawks wanted a war then, I believe they want a war now. 617-266-6868. John in Malden, you're up next. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, John?
This is definitely all I could say is that we should stay the heck out. It's a trap. to trap us into doing what we shouldn't be doing. We did our job for getting ISIS, calmed down and out of there. And furthermore, if you think about it, if Hillary ever got in, she always wanted to go after Putin and Assad. So I say it's the Hillary people who are still left in there who are pushing it to get us in there to do something about it, and we shouldn't do it because we still need Putin as an ally. And that's how I feel about it.
John, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm
hoping the president does not go in there and do what he does.
Thank you, John.
Hope he just stays out. Okay.
Thank you for that call. I really appreciate it. Thank you, John. Look, I agree with you. I completely. And I just want you to stand back, okay? Just objectively. For the sake of argument, I don't believe it. I think Assad would be absolutely insane to have launched his chemical weapons attack 3 weeks before he's on the verge of winning a civil war. Okay, so to me, this makes no sense whatsoever. But let that go. Let's say the Syrians were involved in it. Okay, what's our vital national interest? I mean, just objectively, we go into a war in Syria. We're going to be fighting Assad, who, by the way, is defending the Christians of Syria, who is against radical Islam. So in the fight against radical Islam, he's a secularist. He is not an Islamist. So in the fight against ISIS and radical Islam, he's actually some kind of an ally. But again, let that go. We would be fighting against Assad, Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah and Shiite militias. You're looking at a potential major war in the Middle East when our own border is wide open, when we've got, $21 trillion in debt, when we're still trying to have our economy come back on its feet, when we have so many domestic issues and domestic problems. And I just want you to think about this, okay? We have now been involved in the forever war in the Middle East. It just goes on and on. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen. $7 trillion. 40,000 American soldiers maimed or crippled. Over 5,000 dead. What have we gained? What have we reaped? Look, the soldiers are the best. I love them, okay? They're the best patriots you'll ever find. But I'm saying, in terms of our vital national interest, what have we gained? Now, our great rival, China, which is surpassing us economically, surpassing us militarily, they haven't fought any wars in the last 20 years. They're not being bled. They're not being bankrupted. They're not spilling the blood of their sons and daughters or their treasure, expending their treasure in this never-endless quagmire that is the Middle East. So as we get sucked into these wars, like the Roman Empire, our rival gets stronger and stronger by standing on the sidelines and building up their strength. Trump campaigned on getting us out. Mr. President, get us out. 617-266-6868. Nick in Boston. You're up next. Go ahead, Nick.
I just want to agree with you. I think this is a false flag with the Syrian-Assad situation. I think Assad could be a great asset, just as Russia to the United States people. And you hit it right on the head. This is what are our vital interests here in the Middle East? It's just ridiculous. We have so many problems in the United States that we have to address with our money. There's no reason for us to spill our blood and our treasure in Syria. I enjoy your show. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. Let's go to Thaddeus in Natick, who I believe disagrees with me. Is that correct, Thaddeus?
Yeah, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Love you, man. But on this one, I've got to say, I think you're looking at it from a tactical level where that's where the Russians and the Syrians are hiding behind, saying it doesn't make tactical sense. But strategically, they have every reason in the world to do this.
Okay, why? Go.
Well, from the Russian end of things first. I mean, this is fully within the Kremlin playbook. the Kremlin, Moscow, has always been a tribute state. It relies on the tribute of others. And from their standpoint, they have to prove to the entire world, if you are subservient to us, we will cover you no matter what. And for them, it's important to be able to telegraph now to Turkey, who they are trying to actively court, and the rest, that if you are beholden to us, you can get away with anything. So they're willing to absorb in the short term the effect of this, but this goes back for centuries, where just when they've defeated somebody, that's when they come in with the heavy hands. They're very nice to everyone when they're entangled in a fight and they need help. But when they're winning, if you go all the way back to Ivan the Terrible and the sack of Novgorod, this is their history. When they're winning is when they are their most ruthless, because they are looking at the long game. You either play with us or we will destroy you, and we don't care what the consequences are. They've shown that over and over. Currently, they're poisoning people in Britain. They don't care. They'll absorb the consequences just so they can prove to everyone that if you ally yourself with Moscow, if you ally yourself with the Kremlin, you can get away with anything.
Thaddeus, look, I have to say, 95% of what you're saying, I completely agree with. And I'm telling you as an historian, just so that you know, what you're saying is 100% historically accurate. My quibble with you is on the last 5%. Look, Putin has been brutal. They have been brutal in Syria. You know, the barrel bombs, everything. I could go on and on. Why would they be so reckless, though, to risk a chemical weapons attack? I mean, you can be brutal without using chemical weapons. And, you know, and if they killed thousands, I would say, okay, Thaddeus, they want to finish the war now. But 40 dead, 200 injured for Syria, that's nothing. Why would they risk such massive international condemnation, maybe even U.S. intervention? Putin is many things, but an idiot he's not.
No, he's not an idiot, and he's precisely choosing the most brutal way of doing it. That's the way you can show that you're acting with impunity. If they just had a bomb drop somewhere, they could say, oh, it was mistargeted, something went wrong. Whereas this is so premeditated, so pre-planned, it's that they're proving their ruthlessness.
Interesting.
And it's the same thing for Assad. Right now, Assad knows that he's going to win this. The worry in Assad's mind is what's going to happen a year later. There's a whole series of factions still in Syria, be it the generals, be it the business community. All of them afterwards are not going to trust him. They're going to hate him. Everybody's families have suffered through this. This entire thing was not caused by ISIS in the first place. It was because Assad, you have to remember, at the very beginning of this revolution, it was because the people broadly across all sectors of Syria wanted Assad out. And he has to now prove to everyone that he will rule with an iron fist going forward. And he's not going to prove that by just shooting or bombing 40 people. He has to go gas them now so that people will live in fear of what Assad will do in the future. And, by the way, that he's supported by Moscow. So even if they can try to steal a march on him, he will still have Moscow backing him to oppress him. This is now all strategic. It's not tactical.
Thaddeus, very, very interesting call. Thank you for that call. I appreciate it. Very articulate. 617-266-68. I mean, I disagree, but I got to say, you make some very good points. 617-266-6868. Andy in Nebraska, you're up next. Go ahead, Andy.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Andy?
Oh, pretty good. And there's no doubt they're trying to set the stages for a war with Russia. I mean, what you hear from the left when it comes to Russians and what they've even tried to do to Russians in my city, it's absolutely disgusting. And I wish I could say it or say it somewhere with you what I really think. But we'll let that go. Let's compare the factions in Syria. Assad, a strong man, protects Christians, Jews, and other minorities. And the so-called Free Syrian Army, whose commanders say they work with ISIS, they work with the Nusra Front, and others. I mean, on that front alone, do I need to say anything? Even the so-called moderates, they say they work with ISIS. On the second front, I've read The Art of War. I must have missed in there where it said as you're about to win, gas your own people and get the whole international community against you and nations who could easily topple you. I must have missed that. Did you find it anywhere in there, Jeff?
Well, Andy, I think that's the checkmate argument. And thank you for that call. Look, Thaddeus, very learned guy, very articulate guy, but I understand the Russians are brutal. I understand that. Assad is brutal. But, I mean, think about it. The only power now that can stop Assad and the Russians is us. Especially us leading an international community intervening in Russia. If we brought in NATO, if we bring in Britain, France, run down the whole list, bring in Turkey's already in Syria, but even more, bring in Saudi Arabia, put together an international coalition, that's the only thing now that could stop Assad and Putin from winning this war. And I'm just thinking, like, okay, I get it. They're brutal, and they want to be brutal even when they're winning. But morons, they're not. I mean, you're 3 weeks away from winning this thing. I mean, literally, he now controls 90% of Syria. The rebels are just a few pockets. So he's going to gas and say, daring the world, daring Trump? Ha, 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 ha. I dare you. Bomb me. I dare you. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I don't believe it. And that the rebels were so quick to report this, and the media was so quick to be there with pictures. Remember the attack of the last attack. The international community said, oh, it was Assad behind it. It was inconclusive. The UN had to admit when they examined the last chemical weapons attack, they couldn't tell if it came from Assad or came from the Muslim rebels. So, if I'm a Muslim rebel, my only shot now is to gas my own people and try to drag the world to save my behind. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. This is the Gulf of Tonkin or wag the dog all over again. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. More with your calls next. Jerry on Cape Cod, how are you? Comrade, how you are, my friend?
Comrade.
Is war coming, my friend? Comrade, is war coming?
Is it the white hat or the black hat? Which is it, comrade? Jeff, I need 2 minutes to go through this. I'm about to explode.
Go ahead.
This is inexplicably tied between Libya and Benghazi in Syria. And let me tell you why. It's about the natural gas. Remember I spoke to you about this many years ago?
Yes.
The natural gas pipeline being pushed by the New World Order and another one being pushed by Putin. The company that's going to, and I'll get to the traders in a moment, the company that's going to put the pipeline through for the New World Order is a company called Genie Energy, G-E-N-I-E. The board of directors and majority stockholders are the following: Richard Cheney, Jacob Rothschild, Rupert Murdoch, James Woolsey, Bill Richardson, Larry Summers, and Michael Steinhardt. They're the majority stockholders and board of directors. Now, Jeff, remember how no one got held accountable in Benghazi?
Yes.
There's a reason why. Because Obama, Clinton, the Republicans, the Democrats, both parties, members of the State Department, the Treasury, the Justice Department, were all involved in the arms deal secretly with Syria and Libya. The following traitors: the man from Arizona, who I will leave nameless, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Paul Ryan, Tim Kaine, Jim McGovern, Peter Welch, Tulsi Gabbard, Adam Kinzinger, Elliot Engel, Carl Levin, Bob Menendez. They all secretly met with the so-called moderates and armed them and funded them and trained them. And the man that's going to be the next president of Syria is a man called Muaz Mustafa. He's involved with McCain. He's worked with both sides of the aisle in the Senate and the Congress. You can look all this up, Jeff.
Jerry, and Mustafa, correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially an Islamist, correct?
He's a Palestinian that was born in Syria. He is behind the group called Syrian Emergency Task Force. Remember Tulsi Gabbard was blowing her horn about them?
Yes.
And now all of a sudden she says, oh, we shouldn't be arming anybody. Well, after you met with these people and armed them, then you say you're totally against arming them? What a hypocrite.
Great call, Jerry. As always, great call. No, look, what they want is they want Syria to become a radical Sunni state. That's what Saudi Arabia wants. That's what the Gulf sheiks want. They want somebody who they think we can control running Damascus. So if that means a major war, hey, send the boys and girls to die in another war. Let's go to Peter in Boston. You're up next. Go ahead, Peter.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kuhner. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Peter?
Very well, sir. First of all, just a couple points. I agree with you 1,000%. I saw some of these videos and pictures, and it was looked very strange of a setup. And first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time this happened, it was sarin gas. This is chlorine, and I'm no chemical engineer, but I think that's two different ball fields. Two, I believe that we're being brought in, and your Lindsey Grahams are pushing Trump, and as I spoke to you before, I don't believe he's a warmonger. Three, it's a very bad investment of what's little left. God bless the people that are dying and suffering there. But this has been going on for 7 years. And now it's at the end, and why even get involved? Because now we're starting to grow a little bud on our rose bush here in America.
Bingo. Bingo. Peter, I'm up against it, but look, you nailed it. It's gone on now for 7 years. And now, when Assad and Putin are on the cusp of victory, now we're going to intervene? More with your calls. Next.
The voice of Boston is you. On 680 WRKO Boston, an iHeart radio station. It's 1 o'clock.